Mr. President, I rise this morning, of course, to support the nominations of Pete Buttigieg to be Secretary of Transportation and Alejandro Mayorkas to head the Department of Homeland Security. They're both exceptional choices by the administration to fill critical positions. This afternoon, when we vote on Mr. Mayorkas, it will be the completion of 3 of the 4 national security elements of the cabinet for President Biden, having previously voted for the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense. The post that's remaining, of course, after today's actions, if they are favorable, and I believe they will be, is the Office of Attorney General, and I would like to address that directly. First, let me say this, Mr. President. When you feel that you're a target of terrorists, a personal target of terrorists, you'll never forget the moment. It's only happened twice in my life. On 9/11, 2001, as a United States Senator, I was in a meeting in a room just several feet away from the Senate chamber when the attack on the World Trade Center took place and the attack on the Pentagon. Those were terrorists at work, killing innocent people. There was one more plane in the air. We didn't know where it was headed. It was early in the morning on that day that we were told to evacuate the Capitol building. First time I had ever faced that as a member of Congress. We quickly ran out the doors and down the stairs and stood on the lawn outside the Capitol, wondering what was next, for fear that this building, this symbol of America and its greatness, was a next target of an attack. It could have been. We're not sure, we never will be. But thanks to the heroic efforts of passengers on an airplane, they attacked the attackers, went after the terrorists personally, and brought that plane down in Pennsylvania at the cost of their own lives. In a way, many of us were spared from being targets of terrorism that day. When we reflected on those 3,000 innocent Americans who lost their lives in New York and at the Pentagon, I'll never forget the feeling that I was spared that act of terrorism and the hope that no one in America would ever have that fear again. Fast forward to January 6th, 2021, fewer than 4 weeks ago, here in the United States Capitol. Again, I felt I was the target of terrorists. That was the day when an insurrectionist mob stormed the Capitol, broke through the doors, beat down the windows, and came marching toward this Senate chamber. I'll never forget that moment, and I don't think anyone who was here at the time could possibly forget it. 2:15 in the afternoon, when the Vice President of the United States was removed from the chair that you're sitting in, Mr. President, he was whisked off the platform to a safe room so he could be spared anything that might come from this mob. The rest of us were told to sit at our desk. We're going to make a safe chamber, one safe room in the Capitol. We lined the walls with staffers to protect them against this insurrectionist mob, and we waited, but only for a few minutes. And the order was reversed. Quickly, leave the chamber. What had happened, we came to learn, was that same mob of terrorists continued to advance through the Capitol despite the valiant efforts of the Capitol Police and other law enforcement. It was during that period of time when this mob of terrorists was attacking this building, the United States Capitol, when Officer Brian Sicknick of the Capitol Police lost his life. We honor him tomorrow by bringing his remains to the Capitol for him to lie in repose, a place of honor, for all of us to thank him and his family, and to thank all of the men and women who risked and certainly one who gave his life in the service of our nation. These men and women who stand in silent service every single day are often overlooked by visitors, but they are literally risking their lives. In the time that I've served in the House and Senate, this is at least the 3rd occasion when members of the Capitol Police have given their lives to protect me, and Brian Sicknick will not be forgotten. For those who want to take this insurrectionist mob and the incitement of this mob as just another political protest, I ask them to reflect for a moment, please, on the graphic video evidence of what happened on that day, as the people who were part of this mob took baseball bats and sticks and everything they could get their hands on and beat up against those law enforcement agents. It was a sad moment. Yesterday's New York Times spelled out what led up to it. A big lie that the former president of the United States actually won the November 3rd election. He did not. The votes were counted and he lost, but he's never been able to accept that reality. And what he has done in the meantime is to foment a revolt against our government at the grassroots level across America. And that is the reason why a new Attorney General brought to the position of leadership as quickly as possible is so important. I regret that once again I need to come to the floor to call on the Senate Republicans to stop blocking Merrick Garland from receiving a hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee. We all remember the way Merrick Garland, a judge in the Circuit Court of the D.C. Circuit, was treated by Senate Republicans in 2016 when he was nominated by President Obama to the Supreme Court. I'm not going to recount the entire history today, but I will tell you it was not a proud moment for the United States Senate when Senate leaders on the other side of the aisle announced they would not give him a hearing. They literally would not even meet with him and give him the dignity of such an opportunity to discuss his nomination for the Supreme Court. But I do want to talk about the urgency of putting President Biden's national security team in place, including Merrick Garland, the president's nominee for Attorney General. Our country faces, as we learned on January 6th, challenges of great importance at this moment in our history. As we faced that mob assault on the Capitol building for the first time since the War of 1812, our Capitol was breached by attackers, domestic terrorists who were part of a coordinated, comprehensive effort to stop the government of the United States. That situation needs to be carefully reviewed and examined by the Department of Justice and the Attorney General as quickly as possible. There is no person better qualified to lead this investigation to bring these perpetrators to justice and to prevent future domestic terror attacks than Merrick Garland. When he previously served at the Justice Department, Judge Garland oversaw the investigation and prosecution of the largest domestic terrorism attack in recent history, the Oklahoma City bombing. His qualifications and experience are well suited for the moment we face. As our nation's top law enforcement officer, the Attorney General is a key part of the President's national security team. The Attorney General oversees our nation's law enforcement response to threats both foreign and domestic. My Republican colleagues have frequently talked about the importance of letting a new president get his national security team in place at the start of his new administration. Despite the unresolved nature of the Senate's organizing resolution, other Senate committees have come together on a bipartisan basis to schedule prompt hearings and votes for nominees, including the Secretary of Defense, Director of National Intelligence, Secretary of Homeland Security, and Secretary of State. We need to do the same when it comes to the nomination of Merrick Garland to serve as Attorney General. Why would we allow partisanship to get in the way of national security? I've urged my Republican colleagues on the Judiciary Committee, current Chairman Graham and incoming Ranking Member Grassley, to consent to start the hearing for Merrick Garland as soon as possible. I propose February 8th, next Monday, as a hearing date, in part to accommodate Senator Graham's request to avoid holding a hearing during the impeachment trial. A February 8th hearing date gives the committee sufficient time to review Judge Garland's record. It would follow the same timeline, the very same timeline that Senator Graham used for Judge Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court last year. Remember, the committee has already received the vast majority of Judge Garland's record, including his speeches, interviews, and publications, that less than 5 years ago were presented when he was nominated to the Supreme Court. We have had this material in the committee for years. Senator Graham claims that important paperwork for Judge Garland is still missing. The only thing that has not been filed is Judge Garland's FBI background investigation. As important as it is, the Judiciary Committee has scheduled hearings for previous Attorney General's nominees before the FBI background investigation had been submitted. For one example, the committee received then Senator Jeff Sessions' FBI background investigation just 5 days before his hearing, and we are still 6 days away from our proposed hearing date. So what we're asking is not unprecedented or unrealistic. Senator Graham points out the Attorney General nominees typically have 2-day hearings, one day to question the nominee, the other day to question outside witnesses. This isn't always the case. For example, Republicans held a 1-day hearing to consider Alberto Gonzales' nomination to be Attorney General. But if the goal is to ensure there's sufficient time to question the nominee and hear from outside witnesses, I'm willing to do just that. Allow for 2 rounds of questions of the nominee and an outside witness panel. I also find it surprising that Senator Graham objects to committee business on the eve of an impeachment trial. Just remember the history. On January 16, 2020, the same day that the previous impeachment trial of this president started, Senator Graham held a committee markup during which the committee considered 11 judicial nominees. There was nothing sacred about the day before an impeachment trial then when Senator Graham was chairman. Judge Garland is a consensus pick. As even Senator Graham has acknowledged, the Senate should generally be deferential to the President's cabinet nominees. That is particularly true for national security positions. There is an even greater urgency to move swiftly to confirm Judge Garland, given the events of January 6th and Justice Department's role in investigating and responding to these events and other national security threats. I hope Republicans will consent now to notice a hearing for February 8th. It would show real bipartisanship and fairness. Under our committee rules, we can still notice the hearing with less than 7 days if my Republican colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee agree to do so. We need to get an Attorney General confirmed, and there is no justification for any further delay. While on the subject of confirmation, the Senate has confirmed Mr. Alejandro Mayorkas 3 different times. When you listen to the Republican Senate leader this morning, you may not catch that fact. He previously served for 7 years at the agency he's now nominated by President Biden to leave. Most recently, he served as DHS Deputy Secretary, the agency's second in command and Chief Operating Officer, handling counterterrorism, cybersecurity, border security, emergency management, and other critical matters. We need Mr. Mayorkas' deep expertise and experience in place at the DHS starting as quickly as possible, maybe even today. Perhaps Republicans have forgotten about the last 4 years of chaos at the Department of Homeland Security. Here's a reminder. Under President Trump's administration, the DHS experienced an unprecedented leadership vacuum. DHS lurched from one secretary or acting secretary to the next. Six in total, only 2 of whom were actually confirmed by the Senate. That's more agency heads in the last 4 years than in the 13-year history of the Department of Homeland Security before the Trump administration. For over a year, the agency was led unlawfully by appointed acting Secretary Chad Wolf. Then, just 9 days before President Trump left office, the White House, Mr. Wolf resigned and was replaced by yet another acting secretary. For former Secretaries of Homeland Security, 2 Republicans, 4 of them, and 2 Democrats, every person ever to serve as Senate-confirmed DHS Secretary prior to the Trump administration recently endorsed Ali Mayorkas. They said he is, quote, a man of character, integrity, experience, and compassion, and a proven leader to right the ship. You would hardly believe that if you listened to some of the things said about him this morning on the floor. In their endorsement of Mr. Mayorkas, every former Secretary of Homeland Security before the Trump administration went on to note, the leadership vacuum and turmoil at the Department of Homeland Security may have contributed to the failure to anticipate and adequately prepare for the terrorist attack on the Capitol of January 6. That's the reality. After 4 years of disorder and disarray at DHS, the security of America, including this very Capitol building, suffered because of the lack of leadership under the previous administration. Mr. Mayorkas is the son of a Holocaust survivor and an immigrant from Cuba. Mr. Mayorkas knows firsthand that America can be a beacon of hope to the world and the promise to those who are facing persecution of a place of safe haven. Mr. Mayorkas is an experienced national security leader who can restore integrity and decency at the Department of Homeland Security. I personally appreciated the skill and dedication Mr. Mayorkas shown as the Director of United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. It was in that post in 2012 that he implemented DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, which has allowed more than 800,000 young people to contribute to America's future. I won't recount the entire history, but my trek on this particular issue began 20 years ago when I introduced the DREAM Act. Thanks to my friend, former colleague, and the leader of our country, Barack Obama, by executive order, he created DACA and gave these young people their chance to prove themselves. As Deputy Secretary, Mr. Mayorkas oversaw a $60 billion budget and led a workforce of nearly 230,000 individuals. He excelled in that role. He received the department's Distinguished Service Award, its highest civilian honor, the U.S. Coast Guard's Distinguished Service Award, and a special commendation from the National Security Agency for his achievements in national security and cybersecurity. Among his numerous responsibilities, Mr. Mayorkas led the department's response to the Zika and Ebola outbreaks, a relevant and timely experience that he will bring to DHS during this COVID-19 pandemic. Earlier in his career, Mr. Mayorkas served as Senate-confirmed U.S. Attorney in California. The national president of the Fraternal Order of Police enthusiastically endorsed Mr. Mayorkas, and I quote, "His professionalism, integrity, and commitment to just and fair enforcement of the law makes him an ideal candidate to lead the department. Mr. Mayorkas has pursued criminal wrongdoers and has protected the rights of the innocent with indefatigable vigor. His work reflects all that is right in government." Mr. Mayorkas is an outstanding nominee to be Secretary of Homeland Security. His experience, qualifications, deep expertise, and integrity will serve our nation well in this important and challenging position. Steady leadership at the Department of Homeland Security is sorely needed today. I urge my colleagues to expeditiously confirm Mr. Mayorkas so that he can serve as next Secretary of Homeland Security. Today we'll get a chance to vote on Mr. Mayorkas. I sincerely hope that the Republican members of the Senate Judiciary Committee will allow us to set the stage for a hearing as quickly as possible for our next Attorney General, Merrick Garland. So much is at stake. The national security of the United States should be a higher priority than any partisan consideration. Mr. President, I yield the floor.